Welcome to the Winthrop School Committee meeting of Monday, November 9th, 2020. The meeting will be held via Zoom teleconference. Can you call the roll, please, Ms. Galvin?
Ms. Barry?
Here.
Mr. Boncory?
Here.
Mr. Capabianco?
Here.
Mr. Martucci?
Yep.
Ms. Swope?
Here.
Ms. Powell?
Present.
And Mr. Perrin.
Here. The meeting will be recorded and may be televised live. Mr. Boncory, do you have the flag, the American flag?
Will do.
Would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance this evening?
I will. I pledge allegiance
To the flag.
United States
of the United States of America
to the
and
republic.
to the republic
and
Which is one nation.
one nation under God,
With liberty
indivisible, with
liberty
liberty
and
and
justice for all.
for all.
And through the chair, Mr. Perrin, if I may,
Yes, Superintendent
I
Howard.
would like to request through the chair to move the superintendent report out of the agenda and do that next if the committee would allow for that.
I make a motion that we reverse the agenda and take the superintendent's report now.
Do I have a second on that motion?
Second.
Second by Ms. Swope. Any discussion? Hearing none. Ms. Galvin, can we have a roll call vote, please?
Ms. Barry?
Yes.
Mr. Boncory?
Yes.
Mr. Capabianco?
Yes.
Mr. Martucci?
Yes,
Ms. Swope?
Yes.
Ms. Powell?
Yes.
And Mr. Perrin.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Perrin. Just in the essence of time, and I know that we are gathering more folks that are watching us and wanting to provide public comment and really listen to the meeting as a whole. So I just asked to jump ahead a little bit to give an update on our transition to hybrid, as you know, has been the plan for several weeks now, and knowing that there would be folks that would be interested in hearing the update, certainly on top of our communication this weekend from the governor as well as the Commissioner of Education on Friday. So if you don't mind, I'll take a few minutes just to walk folks through this. And Ms. Galvin, if you have a second, if you can allow me to share my screen, I will attempt to put some documents up for people to focus on as I speak. Okay, so what I put up is the color-coded metric that we have had in place since the middle of August. This was the last metric that we were using and had used this metric right up until last week, and it was changed this Friday, and I'll be able to put that up on the screen as well. But just to give you all an overall update over our planning and the transition planning to move to hybrid. So as the school committee is well aware, we had originally scheduled to open up schools this year in a hybrid model on September 16th, which was to be the first day of school for our students. Our teachers, as you recall, began on August 30th and spent the first 10 days of school looking at professional development activities, learning protocols, and really doing a lot of work around opening schools. It was about mid-August when we determined that given our designation as being a community in the red, that we were not going to be able to accomplish opening in a hybrid, because at that point in time, the Department of Education's expectation was that if a community was in the red, that you were to open in a remote fashion. So on September 16th, that is how we opened, and that remains how we have been open since. And just to share, I'm going to share another screen with you. I'm going to stop that share and I'm going to add another one. So again, you have to bear with me. So if you look at the top part of this metric while I'm speaking, what you're looking at is our overall average daily incident rate beginning when we first, right before we went red on August 12th, starting with this overall incident rate being 7.6. And this is the tracking method that the school department and our COVID Health and Safety Committee has kept and has shared throughout this process. So I think while I'm speaking and giving you sort of an update on what we've done most recently in terms of our planning, it's pretty interesting to look at each week, starting with August 12th, and taking a look at where we fit in that metric. And again, if you remember, being an 8 at a number 8 kept you in the red, and we started off in the green, a little below 8, and then for several weeks in a row stayed in the red area up until most recently when where you see yellow, which I'll talk about when I talk about the new metric presented by the governor. That is our most recent week right here at 55.3. So just to give you an update about what we've been doing while we've been sitting in the red, besides working with our students in a remote model, most recently we have surveyed our staff again to get an understanding of what their intent was as we are planning to transition to hybrid. And this work began back when we started to see the light at the end of the tunnel a little bit. If you look at the end of September, we started to come down a little bit into the 8 and the 8.3 area. And it was at that time we started to dig our heels in a little bit more deeply about the potential of going yellow and starting to gather some more information from our parents and our staff. We've also most recently resurveyed our staff to get their intent of returning to work for potential of returning to a hybrid, and received some data back from them. We have posted for positions. We started posting for positions actually back in July, and have kept many of those positions posted and added to that cadre, whether it be on School Spring, Indeed, through the local principal association, and also working with different colleges who are graduating people working, coming out of school to work in the field of education, pinning on their boards as well. We've also updated our hybrid plans from the original plans that was submitted to the Department of Education back in January. And we updated those to reflect a lot about what we've learned during remote, and sort of more importantly, to define what remote will look like when we do transition to a hybrid plan. If you remember what a hybrid plan looks like, most students in a hybrid plan are attending school 2 days a week, and they are doing remote work 3 days a week. So we wanted to make sure that we updated that based on the findings that we have had throughout the school year and so far, and in moving into a hybrid. How is that remote going to look differently than it does now? Right now, our students are in front of their teachers for approximately 5 to 5.5 hours a day, with the exception of kindergarten. And that's live teaching, where the students are on the other end of a computer and they can access their teacher throughout those lessons. And when we moved to a hybrid plan, we wanted to make sure that we were clear that that is going to look a little bit different, because many of our teachers, especially our elementary school teachers, it's very difficult for them to be in multiple places at one time. And we wanted to make sure our parents were aware of that. So we recently sent a survey to our parents just to inform them of the differences, and giving them a sense of what that might look like, so that they could start to think about what they may choose to do when we actually are ready to go to a hybrid. Because parents will have the option to continue to allow their students to stay home 5 days a week and learn fully remote, or send their students back to school in the hybrid model, 2 days in school and 2.5 days they would remain remote. So we felt it was important to at least let them, parents and families, know that this is a possibility moving forward, and that here is some, providing them some information about how it will be a little bit of a different look in terms of the remote aspect. Other things that we have accomplished is we have hired some certified nursing assistants posted for those and hired so far 2. We need still to hire 1 more. And those people will be working side by side with our nurses when we return to hybrid, and those we've already hired are working now. Those folks will also be working with our COVID medical waiting rooms. And what those are classrooms or spaces within each one of our buildings that are set up to handle staff or students who have any presentation of an illness when they are back in school with us. So if a student were to be in a classroom and present with some symptoms related to COVID, the teacher is going to be able to contact the nurse or the nursing assistant to come and meet with that child and bring them to the classroom that we have set up for our students to be evaluated by our nurse. And it's a space that's separate from the classroom. I'm sorry, from the nurse's regular station. And that's designed in an effort to be safe and keep anyone who may be symptomatic separate from others. So we have been able to do that as well. So I know that folks so those are just some of the most recent updates of the things that we're doing. And I know that folks are aware that DPH made changes to the metric as of Friday. And those, we were pretty excited about that. I think that the first metric, the one that you're looking at right now, that has used that number 8 or more cases to keep us in the red, is a pretty conservative metric that didn't have a lot of flexibility in it and for school districts, and also didn't allow anything like the size of your community to impact that number. So I think changing the metric and for the state to take the time to look at the data and research what needed to be changed, I do think it is a good move to change that. So now they've added looking at the percent positive, and I'm going to show you that slide next. But if you look at these numbers in general in the red, where you know, for our designation of red district, making us fully remote. If you come down to the bottom of the red, the last place we was a 36.4 designation or incident rate per 100,000, and that kept us in the red. And then we jumped up to a 55.3 designation, which would have, prior to the change, put us sort of in a hot red spot. But now that the metric has changed, it has turned us to yellow. So I'm going to share what the new metric looks like with you now. I'm going to close this one off, share again. So the old metric that you were looking at is now gone, and this is the new metric. The new metric, I told you, it adds a little bit to it to make it a little more equitable among communities. And one of the things it did was it changed or added the population of your community. So prior to this, it was sort of a one size fits all, and it didn't matter how big or how small your community was. That number 8 was based on the cases per 100,000. Now what they've done is split the population up. So districts or communities that are under 10,000 people fit in this left-hand column. Districts like Winthrop or communities like Winthrop that are between 10,000 and 50,000 follow this middle column in terms of how we're going to be color coded. And then obviously districts over 50,000 follow the column on the right. So I showed you in the last slide that we became yellow this week. And what that means is we had more than 10 average cases per 100,000, or we could have been at 5%. And I'm going to show you what we actually were. So if we were both above 10 cases per 100,000 and above 5%, we would have been red, but we were below the 5%. So we had more than 10 cases, but below 5% positivity rate. And so that's what jumped us into the yellow. So this is the Department of Public Health's COVID dashboard that comes out every week. So I have every week of this data since they first started publishing it. And if this was last week, this bar that says 55.3 next to Winthrop, and that's the average daily incident rate per 100 100,000 people. For us, the number is 55, and that's over the last 14 days. We were averaging 55 cases per 100,000. And our positivity rate for this particular week was 4.03%. Just to give you a sense of the difference between this week and the prior week. If I go back last week, this number 55.3 was 36.4. The week before that, that same number was 10.6. And the week before that, it was 11.7. So you could see that obviously we're climbing in the total number of cases per 100,000. So, just to back up quickly one more time, October 7th, we were 8.3. The 14th, we were 11.7. The 21st, we were 10.6. The 29th, we were 36.4. And last week, we were 55.3. So there's a significant increase there. And then if you look at this column where it says the positivity rate in the last 14 days, this week we were 4.3. If that number was 5%, positivity rate, we would have been red. So the only reason we're not red this week is because the change in the metric says if you are below 5%, then you are a yellow designation. So what does that all mean? It means a lot of confusion for parents, to be honest. It certainly came sort of without notice, and which was fine because we were, like I said, excited that the metric was changing because it definitely is going to allow us more flexibility and give us a better chance at having our students get back into school and back into in-person learning. But it did present some confusion for parents because I think families and quite frankly, there were staff members who weren't sure if that means we have to switch right now and that the schools should be in-person learning immediately. And I can tell you after speaking with the Commissioner of Education, as well as a number of other superintendents, there are certain things that didn't change. And some of those things are when you switch a color, you have to monitor yourself in that color lane, for lack of better terms, for a period of 3 weeks to ensure that you're consistently staying within that lane or within that color. And during that time frame, you should be planning to move forward to a hybrid model or to a full in-person learning model. Some more confusion that came out of the governor's announcement, which prompted me to ask the commissioner, was around the waiting period of 3 weeks, and then around the full in-person versus hybrid. And what does that mean for a community like Winthrop? So Winthrop, along Winthrop Public Schools and our staff and our school committee, and certainly our conversations with the Board of Health since building these plans starting in July, we have always agreed to follow the 6-foot distancing recommendation of the CDC. And for us, that meant that we had to do a huge assessment of our school district to see how many kids we could fit into classrooms, meaning preschool straight up through the high school at 6-foot distancing. And we did a lot of work with measurements and setting up desks and drawing lines on the floor and measuring from a teacher's desk to a student desk. And we determined that at a 6-foot distancing space in between desks, we could on average fit anywhere from 12 to, in some cases, 13 desks in a classroom. Now, if you remember the middle school, high school being a newer building, the classrooms are actually smaller than those of the elementary schools because they're much more conservatively built. In terms of putting all of our students, we also measured to see if we could fit all of our students at the 3-foot distancing. And there is very few classrooms that we would be able to accomplish it at a 3-foot distance throughout the district and still allow to be in that classroom a teacher desk and any other furniture and material. So pretty much since July, all the folks that have been involved in this planning and reading all the guidance of the CDC and the guidance of the Department of Education have never wavered from the fact that during this pandemic, that the 6-foot distancing rule with masks, pre-K to 12, and all teachers was pretty much the standard here. So I just think that's sort of important information for folks to understand and be reminded of. It's been so long that we've been doing this work now that I think it's easy to forget what we have done. And now that the metric has been changed, which again is pretty helpful to us because it gives us more flexibility, we now have to adjust to that. And I'm going to share 2 more things with you that I think are important. Get rid of this. I'm going to share. So back in October, middle of October, at one of the school committee meetings, and then at the second school committee meeting, we talked about the work that has been done at the district level with all of our administrators, principals, all of our sub-teams. We have lots of COVID sub-teams, whether it's the health and safety committees or whether it's curriculum committees. We knew that we could not come back to open school in a hybrid plan. However, we wanted to make sure we were continuing to plan to open our schools in hybrid or full in-person learning at some point. So we talked about it I want to say it was the beginning of October, that first school committee meeting, when we started to reconfigure how we were going to start to transition our high need students into school. And I felt as though it was important to sort of put it in a layout similar to this. So this is an old plan that I'm putting up here just for you to be able to compare it to the next one. And it just gives you a sense and shows you how we broke things down. So high need students have always been expected to have a plan to return, even if the school district was in red and even if the designation was for remote learning. There was always a caveat in there from the state that we needed to work to do our best to get our high need students in, even if we were in the red. So we had planned to bring our high need students in on October 19th, and we were successful at doing that for the coming school, middle school, and high school. And we needed to wait an extra week to bring our pre-K to 2 high need students in due to the fact that two staff members in that building tested positive for COVID, and we needed to sanitize the buildings, and several people had to be on a 14-day quarantine. So that date got pushed out from October 19th to November 2nd. And we also have another group of high need students that we call cohort B, that we had a targeted date of November 9th to bring those students back. But given the fact that we had to push these dates back, this has not yet been accomplished. We do have a new set of dates that I'll share with you next. And then our general education students, our regular ed kids that are going into a hybrid model of a blue group and a gold group. We've always said that as soon as we turn yellow, we will follow the process, which we have been doing, and sit in yellow for 3 weeks and watch the data and continue to plan to get our students back. We were hopeful that we would be able to do that by November 23rd. But as I showed you before, the numbers kept us in red, and we're headed pretty much in the wrong direction starting October 14th, when those numbers went from 8.3 to 11.7, then to 10.6, then to 36.4. So we in essence sort of got stopped here. And now we're in the process of making recommendations of how to move forward. And we're pleasantly surprised that on Friday, because I was not expecting our designation, 1 to be changed or 2 to be yellow as of Friday, but because it was changed, we now have to take a look at how do we now adjust these dates and what's reasonable. So I'm going to share that with you next, and then I am going to leave you with one thought after that. So here's the revised version of, and you see that it says draft on there. This was drafted on Thursday.
We can't see this one yet, Lisa.
Oh, it's not, is it up? No? All right, hold on. It's just taking time to load, so hold on one second. And I will put it up. That up there now?
Yep.
Okay. So school committee packets, information to the school committee is due on Thursdays, and we spend time during the week deciding what we're going to share with the school committee for my report. And so one of the things that I had planned to share with them is the revised version of the thing that you just saw prior to this. So it's the same chart, but it speaks to new targeted dates based on a whole bunch of things, based on our review of staffing, based on our review of the metric, our hopefulness of getting out of the red, which has been sort of the mantra that I've been speaking, to the subcommittees about on a weekly basis. That
Excuse me, Superintendent.
Yes.
Sorry to interrupt you. I think you put the same one up again.
No, this one says, doesn't it say January 4th on there? Under the hybrid phase 2, do you see?
Oh,
Yes.
got it. Okay, sorry. Yep. My
So-
apologies.
So we work weekly to go over and decide what we're going to share with the school committee. But more importantly, as a team, we continue to work and push towards moving to a hybrid or a full in-person learning model. So as of Thursday, when the packet is due to provide to the school committee, this is the adjustment to those dates that the groups that work to do, get together to do this work, the subgroups get together to do this work, have been pushing towards. And these are suggested, absolutely suggested dates, and ironically came and were given to the school committee and certainly thought of by me right up until Friday at 1 o'clock, when the governor sort of surprised us and said, here's the new designation and you are now yellow, which again was awesome news and we were psyched about it. But this was already in the hands of the school committee. So I wanted to share this and then share a recommendation or a suggestion to the committee as part of my job as the superintendent in trying to figure out how quickly we can return our kids to school. So as you can see, the targeted dates for the second cohort of high needs kids as of Thursday was suggested to be November 30th. And the second phase for the cohort of special needs students that is already in 2 days a week, we were looking at that same time to have that group transition to their 4.5 days a week of, 4 days a week of in-person learning. And then we were looking to do the same, get those 2 days a week up to 4 days a week on January 4th for cohort B of our high need students. And on that same day, begin the transition for the rest of our students in a hybrid model back to school. All of this was worked on and thought about prior to the announcement on Friday. The other piece of this that we never lose sight of, and Athletic Director Serino and Principal Crombie meet with me weekly to review all of the high school athletics recommendations that are coming out of both the MIAA as well as the environmental is another group of people that deal with the environment in terms of athletics. And they have been writing new rules and adjusting the rules and regulations for athletics since the day we closed. So I also wanted to, make a recommendation that if we are moving back to a hybrid model anytime soon, that the committee start to think about the effect on athletics and practices and game dates and things like that. So fast forward to Friday when the commissioner and the governor made their announcement and allowed us to see the rubric and see where we were and determined that we were yellow. And again, many people doing the happy dance that we were yellow because it means, there's light and we can take a step forward. And so at this point, I would change some of these recommendations to obviously potentially to earlier dates. However, I do think it is critical because this is a significant change that the Board of Health, as they have been involved since day one, when we went completely remote, and back in mid-September, right around September 16th, pretty much to October 7th, when we were hovering, or at least getting somewhat close to getting out of the red. So we were bouncing from 8 to 8.7, to 9.5 to 8 to 8.3. So there was some hope there. The Board of Health has been kept in the mix along the way with all of those thoughts and transitions. This transition is obviously now looking much more realistic because we are actually in the land of yellow. So I would recommend, before the school committee made any motion or thought to accept any of these dates, that they meet with the Board of Health, have conversation with the Board of Health about these dates, maybe earlier dates, maybe later dates, whatever it is that both the school committee and the Board of Health feel are reasonable and appropriate to keep our students and our staff safe, but also with a solid understanding of what is going on in our community in the moment. The Board of Health has lots of information in terms of how many positive cases we have, what the clusters are, what they are related to. They may want these dates or suggest these dates be earlier or later, but the committee, if they meet with the Board of Health, will at least have the opportunity to have those discussions to help them make an informed decision on when we do return to a hybrid, what date that will be. Again, don't forget, we went into the yellow Friday, which means the rules around how long you have to wait have not changed. So that means we have, at a minimum, 3 weeks to look at data to determine if it is feasible to go back, which allows for a little bit of flexibility in determining what the best date to return is, which may be different than the dates that were predicted as of this past Thursday. And I know that this is a lot of information and it flows out of my mouth pretty quickly. And that's because I do this every single day. And so that's important for people to understand. And then just the last part of all of this is what is happening next with us in terms of the school district and our continuation of planning. We don't stop planning just because the metric has changed. So the next step for us is, again, I've suggested that there's a meeting with the Board of Health, which I certainly would be in attendance at that. We will watch the data for the next 3 weeks. We will finalize staffing to determine if, now that we have more information to go by, when we let our staff know that we are yellow and the potential to return could be as little as a month from now or 3 weeks from now, find out who's coming back and who can't come back, approve or not approve leave of absence or request for ADA accommodations. We'll be sending families at this point, which was planned to be sent out on Tuesday anyway. However, it's important for us, to make sure we get that information as soon as possible, even more so now being yellow. So we'll be sending out a document similar to the survey you got, but now we're going to be asking parents to commit to either the hybrid or the fully remote program. We're going to determine the reasonable dates to continue to transition our high needs population in. We'll determine reasonable dates for everyone else based on the information that the school committee and the Department of Public Health discussed together. The committee will also get some more information on the MIAA options for high school athletics. Those should be out this week. If they're not already out, I'll check with Mr. Serino tomorrow. And we will also do some work on reviewing our ability to transport our athletes if and when high school athletics comes back on board. And that's for the next school committee meeting, where we'll have more data to help you understand the research we have done on that. That's probably enough for the entire community to digest. I'm going to stop sharing my screen, although it's convenient not to share my face while I do that. And sort of open it up to the committee if the committee has any questions about the whole wealth of data that I've just put before you.
Anyone have any questions for Superintendent Howard?
It's a lot, I know, and I apologize for giving you so much. I did get a little excited, so, with the potential, the teachers, we talk to the teachers obviously every day. Folks are excited to get our students back in front of us. We just want to make sure that when we do make these decisions to return and we pick a date, my fear is picking dates and disappointing kids again. And telling kids, oh, we can go back next week, or we can go back, exactly 3 weeks from now. And if that's not realistic, I would caution us in not putting unrealistic expectations out for kids. And I think the conversations with the Department of Public Health will help guide that next step decision-making for you.
Okay, Mr. Martucci, it looked like you had your hand up first.
Suzanne can go first if she wants.
Ms. Swope?
I just had a question about yellow versus red. Was there a difference in the actual cases?
So yeah, there was well, not one that would explain yellow to red. So there was a difference in the cases in that we had more cases in the last week than we had the week before, and we were red the week before. But the Department of Public Health, their changing of the metric incorporated a percent positive aspect, and it also separated out communities by population. So they, in essence, sort of changed the rules on how you become red or yellow. So it's difficult even to compare the two of them because they're metrics that are based on totally different points. So before they weren't looking at your community size, everybody fit in the same category for community, and the percent positive rate wasn't factored into your color last week, but it is.
Okay, just to make sure that I understand that it doesn't, we may have had the same number last week versus this week, but because they changed the way in which they calculated this, that would put us in a different category. Is that correct?
Pretty much. I know Meredith is on there, and again, I try to stay in my wheelhouse, which is typically academics and athletics. So if I'm missing points on this, Meredith, from a health perspective, feel free to jump in and let me know.
Oh, sorry.
There you are.
I know I keep on going back and forth. So no, you're exactly right. What had happened is that they switched the algorithm that determines these metrics, and that is as simple as it is. That's what it boils down to. What we were looking, not what DPH was looking at for high risk, meaning those red designations, they modified based on population. So that's just a different algorithm is now being applied in different metrics.
So that just to make sure that I understand this, that we had no difference in terms of the number of cases, but because the algorithm changed, it looks as if we're better.
I don't think it looks as if we're better. I think it looks, we're in a different designation. I mean, we still have very high. I look at the incidence rate. We've all been lamenting and struggling over the incidence rate hovering around 8 and saying, when's it going to go below 8? And now we're at 55. So it just means that we can sit at 55 and be deemed lower moderate risk based on these new metrics.
Thank you.
Martucci?
So I don't know if this is the time, but I'm looking to maybe adjust some dates. Is that something we want to talk about now?
I think we can discuss it at this point.
Okay.
Okay, I think we should wait till like under all the new business.
Excuse me?
I think we should wait till we get like some kind of motion on there for dates and our new business or old business, either place it comes up.
I think
Because
the,
we're just talking about her report right now.
right, but point of order is that he has a right to discuss it and can make a motion at any time during the meeting. Especially where it's falling under something that the superintendent has just put forth. So need to wait.
I don't
So,
think-
You want to continue?
yeah, if we, I'd like to discuss, maybe moving some dates up because of the new information. I know that there's a lot of information and things are so fluid, moving and changing and all that stuff. And obviously Lisa is very thorough in what she does and she knows exactly what's going on. But I really believe that, or I'd like to see us put, more definitive dates on in a much shorter period of time. Because I feel as though, what the governor said, with his comments about students being able to go back to school safely. And again, I think we can do that. We've already brought some kids back in and that's been going well. So I was thinking maybe that we could turn around and have the next cohort of high needs kids come back in no later than the 23rd of November, if everything goes right. And then go hybrid with all students no later than December 7th.
Are you still taking into consideration Superintendent Howard's?
Oh, I am sorry. Yeah, I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman. I did leave one thing out. I think that not so much the high needs kids, I think they should come back on the 23rd. But before we do go back with with all students on the 7th, I think we should be doing that pending a meeting with the Board of Health. I'd like to run it by them.
Okay, so I guess, are you forming a motion or are you just suggesting that we put?
I'll adjust the dates. I'm not sure what Ms. Howard has to say, and if other members of the committee have anything to say about that.
Ms. Howard,
Yeah,
can you address that?
so, as I said earlier, certainly as fast as we can, we want to bring our students back into school. And our high need students, we have had on a plan that I believe was already approved by the school committee prior to this. And certainly I have no problem working with staff to see if we can bring them in, our students back prior to November 30th. And that's sort of always been the plan. That moved targeted date was based on, certainly the backup that we had in starting on time when we wanted to. So I don't see a problem with working towards November 23rd for our high needs group as being a new targeted date. And then I still believe that the Board of Health, again, the January 4th date was put on there on Thursday with the hope that we were going to be out of the red soon, and then we got out of the red sooner than we had anticipated. So if that date can be moved earlier, and again, it's not just about the date, and it's really about the health of the community as one aspect of this, which the Board of Health is the party that I think, or the group that can weigh in on that and give the school committee information to help make an informed decision. And then I can come in after these two things that go out this week in terms of how families are sending their students back to school and what the final outcome is for teachers who are going to take a leave of absence, and it may be none. We then have to take and redo all our cohorts. So our cohorts are done, but we'll reconfigure those, and all that takes a little bit of time. But in the meantime, while we're doing that work, if the conversation is had with the Board of Health, then that date of January 4th may become earlier, could be December 7th, could be December 14th, could be December 21st, or could be February 5th, depending upon information gathered from the Board of Health, as well as you do have to hear back from us, because we have to let you know how many students are coming back. And if parents, based on the last survey we did, it was about 22% of the families said that they were not interested in returning their students to a hybrid model. If we're now asking them to commit with the understanding that soon as we, 3 weeks in the yellow is what we're looking at. And if everything else falls into place, students could be going back as early as December 7th. That's more information for parents to make an informed decision. And if we find out we have a lot of kids that are not coming back because families have chosen not to send them back, we do need to reconfigure our own staff to help support those students that are at home. And so if a teacher was going to have 18 kids in their classroom and is now only going to have 6, then that frees up that teacher for us to be able to perhaps move those 6 students into another classroom and make that teacher a fully remote teacher. That takes a little bit of time. We're not talking weeks, but it definitely takes more than a 24-hour time frame for us to do that. So yes, with the high need students, I would support and definitely think we can work towards the 23rd. Don't know that we can accomplish that or not, but I do still strongly recommend any changes in the January date to be that made or any definitive date for the rest of the students to be worked on with the Board of Health, feedback from me as to where we're at after you have that meeting. And then the school committee as a whole can choose that date. That's the most reasonable, given the information that you have, that you don't currently have. I know that's a long way of saying it, but it's not like an easy, we don't just flip the return to hybrid switch without having to have a bunch of other things in place that the regular folks may not know about.
Corey?
Yes. See, I was a little concerned as well, because we did go up. We went up to 55 cases this past week. We were at 55 for an instance.
Mr. Boncory, you muted yourself.
Sorry. Am I okay now?
Yes.
Yeah, I was very concerned because, of course, we all got the report that we had 45 cases over the weekend, and we're sitting at 55 as a case, and that's higher than we've ever been. We were at 36 cases, and that was phenomenal weeks ago. And this week we're 55. So things are not getting greater, even though the state is now designating us as a yellow. But as a yellow, and if we can maintain the yellow for 3 weeks, we should be trying to get back in school in person as fast as we can. I don't want to think that this committee should step on Superintendent Howard's toes. I think she has a plan, but I'd like to see her question the parents. I know that you questioned the parents. I know that we had brought in some high need students and some did not want to come back and return. And I guess you had 22%, I believe is what you said, that didn't want to return. I think what we should be finding out is how many people would come back to full in-person learning on January 4th rather than hybrid learning on January 4th. The reason is that I don't believe hybrid learning is beneficial as full remote or full in-person, because they're only going to be seeing the teacher 2 days a week. And right now at remote, they're seeing them 5 days a week. And in person, they'd be seeing them 5 days a week. I know we have a problem with the metrics that the 6 foot apart, we may not have room for many students. One person in the classroom gets it, the whole classroom has to quarantine for 14 days. At 6 foot apart, if one person in the classroom gets it, the seats around him have to quarantine for 14 days, but not the class. But if we have a situation where parents do not want to send their children back with 22% to a full learning, we might have room to go back to full in-person learning. And I think that would be the best option for our students rather than the hybrid option. And I just want to get some other feeling about that.
May I
Mr.
speak?
Chairman, may I be recognized?
Before we go too far down afield here, I think we might want to think about our public comment. And then we can bring back the discussion. I don't believe there's actually a motion on the floor right now.
I thought Mr. Matucci made a motion.
Me too.
Oh, it clearly was not seconded. Did you make a motion, Mr.?
Well, I'll second it for the purpose of speaking, because I mean, we're going in order here and we all have thoughts in our brain. I'd like to
Matucci,
speak
did you make a
now.
motion, Mr. Matucci? You're
He's
on,
muted.
you're muted, sir.
Not
He's
muted,
actually
he's
not muted.
You just can't hear him.
he's not-
I'll try and unmute and remute him and see that.
You might need to just turn his volume up.
Mr. Martucci, can you try to unmute now? No,
Turn the volume up.
yeah.
Still not.
It's not picking up his volume.
Matucci, why don't you log out and come back in? And in that time, we'll listen to some public comment and come back to that question. I know there was not a motion in a second.
Well,
initially.
Mr. Chairman, 2 other members are allowed to comment, and while the thoughts are fresh in our head, I think we should stay on the subject right now.
Well, I'd like to go to public comment so that the public who's listening in can weigh in, and then we can come back once a motion is on the table and actually open it up to discussion.
Okay, I have 2 hands raised. Okay. First is Robert DeMarco. Mr. DeMarco, can you hear?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. And I'm going to be brief. Rob DeMarco, Precinct 6. I'm talking as a parent of a 7 and 10-year-old in the Winthrop public school systems. You know, we've been told, and I understand a lot of people aren't comfortable in going back. Obviously, I feel an in-person education is a right as a child. That is a fundamental right that a child should have. And we've been told since September, when we went into the red zone, we've been told that the expectation from the state was that we had to be remote. And a lot of people, when our overall numbers were lower, were saying, well, maybe it's not fair, you know, because of our population size, but we were constantly told the expectation is that we're remote. And if you go against the state expectations, there can be consequences.
Correct.
Now the expectation is that we go back. In fact, in the yellow, the expectation is if you are gray, green, or yellow, the expectation now is you should go back. In fact, they're not even saying hybrid. They're saying in-person full-time. Now, I'm a realist. I know that there's a way to ease into things. I'm not suggesting that tomorrow you go back in person full-time, but I'm just saying that after hearing that the expectation is that you go back full-time now, I would expect the school committee to be consistent with the expectation when they told us we can't go back. And now with the expectation being told that we should go back, I would expect that the school committee would vote accordingly. And that's all I have. And thank you all so much.
Thank you. Next up, I have Shannon. No last name. Shannon, can you unmute yourself? Thank you.
Yes, hi, I'm Shannon Gerard, and I just wanted to speak briefly because I am a public school teacher. I do not teach in Winthrop. However, I have been back in school, in-person learning since September. And my children have been sitting here at home doing remote learning. There's a frustration because I know that in-person learning can work and it does work. And I know that we have the safety precautions in place. And my goal is to get these kids back in school. It has been far too long that they have been out. And I know a lot of teachers want that. I'm concerned waiting until January 4th to get our kids back in. I think that's far too long. I think we know what we need to do. We have the means, the PPE, the masks, everything that could be available is ready to go. And I think the longer we wait, the mental health of our students deteriorates. And I feel like if we keep waiting, we're just pushing back their opportunities to get a great education and be in school. That's basically all I wanted to say. And I'm hoping the school committee will look at that and realize that January 4th is just really too far away. I've been doing it since September. It can be done. It can be done safely. I work with young special ed children that are 3 and 4 years old, and they can wear their masks. So I think kids that are in high school or middle school or elementary school can absolutely follow these safety guidelines. So please consider that and get these kids in sooner rather than later. Thank you.
Thank you.
Do we have any further public comment?
We do. Next is Orla Toomey. Orla, can you unmute yourself?
Yep, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to speak, and thank you all for your hard work. I know it's been very difficult. I just have a couple of things that I want to raise for consideration. I think the date that was proposed to bring our high need students back is the 23rd, and that is Thanksgiving week. And for children who thrive with consistency, I just wonder if that is the best week to bring them back. So I just ask you to think about that. And then also, I think one of the committee members had raised the fact that the trend in Winthrop is going in the wrong direction. And I know that we're going to observe for 3 weeks, but then we're back in the holiday season. So is that a consideration as well? And I would ask you to think of that when you make some decisions on this matter.
Thank you. Any further public comment, Ms. Galvin?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Laura, you're muted.
All right, next is Gianna Holgerson. Gianna, can you unmute?
Hi, my name's Jean Holgerson. I want to thank
Hi.
everyone for all your hard work during this crazy time. I'm from Precinct 6. I actually have 4 children in the school system. 2 are in high school, 1 is in middle school, and 1 is in the Cummings. So as a healthcare professional, I am a nurse practitioner. I work in the community. I own a home care agency, and I'm a primary care nurse practitioner. And I'd like to sort of weigh in on the mental aspect for the children that is affecting everyone. So, I mean, it's vital to get the kids back to school. There's been a huge increase in suicidal thoughts, attempts, anxiety, and depression. They're amongst the major medical health consequences that are happening right now. And we know the risk of COVID to the younger generation is actually quite low. And it's rare for these kids to transmit to the others. And I know that, you know, we all know now how to wear masks. We've been doing now this since March.
It's
so
7 o'clock.
Okay, I think all the children are pretty coherent about wearing the masks. They know to wear the mask. They know to wash their hands. You know, with the proper provisions in place. You know, maybe face shields. I know they have glass areas around the desk and around the teacher's desk. I think this should be in consideration, because I think that we could safely go back to school with this. And we know that the droplet precautions with having the masks on, now the standard is 3 feet opposed to the 6 feet. So I mean, I think that we should safely get the children back to school. I mean, they really need this, and academically they're suffering. And for me, it's very hard because I'm out at work every day as an essential worker. My kids are home alone, learning. So as a mom, I've been struggling with this as well. So I really would hope everyone would consider strongly to send the children back to school December 7th. Thank you.
Thank you, Jane. Any further public comment, Ms. Galvin?
Yes, there's one more here. Jillian Texera.
Hi, it's Gillian Texera. I'm from Precinct 6. I have 2 children, one in the middle school, one at the Cummings. I'm also involved with the PTO. Just one was a point of information. The week of November 23rd is Thanksgiving week, and there is no school on the Thursday or Friday. And I believe for the high needs children that you were talking about for the 4 days, they go to school Monday, Tuesday, do the remote learning Wednesday, and then return Thursday and Friday. So in reality, there's no difference between the 23rd or the 30th because there's no school on the 26th or 27th of that week. The other thing that I wanted to make a comment on is that I really want to see our kids get back, but with our trends keep going up and down, I agree. I think they need to be looked at. If I could have full in-person learning versus a hybrid, I would definitely take that. I like the idea of my kids being able to see their teachers 5 days a week, whether it's in person or virtually, versus having 2 days of asynchronous learning and then 2 days of in-person. Thank you for your time and all of your hard work.
Thank you. Alvin, do we have any additional?
Yes, one more. It's under Winthrop Teachers Association.
Good evening. My name is Kristen Reynolds. I'm the president of the Winthrop Teachers Association. And I have a letter that I submitted for public comment that I'm going to read that was submitted on behalf of the executive board of the Winthrop Teachers Association. Dear Superintendent Howard, Chairman Perrin, and the esteemed school committee members, we write to you today to express our deep concerns regarding the new COVID-19 health and safety metrics released by Governor Baker and his coronavirus task force last Friday. For over 12 weeks, we've been dealing with the same set of facts. And while they may have been controversial at times in Winthrop, they have at least been consistent. This all changed on Friday. With these new metrics, while these new metrics are concerning to us, what is even more concerning to us is the suggestion that they now indicate it is safe to return students to school full-time. Governor Baker himself has said that we have entered a second surge of cases in Massachusetts. Based on previous metrics, the case count in Winthrop would mean that a city 6 times our size would reach the red zone. It's clear that there are clusters that continue to lead infections in Winthrop, as evidenced by the more than 40 new cases last Wednesday and Thursday combined. According to the metrics published by the Harvard Global Health Institute, accelerated spread of the virus occurs between 10 and 24 cases per 100,000 people, and beyond 25 cases per 100,000 people is a tipping point that requires a stay-at-home order. Winthrop's most recent case count is over 55 cases per 100,000 people. We write to you today not because we enjoy remote learning. We desperately miss having our students in our classrooms. We know as well as anybody else that students are missing something. We miss hearing laughter in our classrooms, voices in our hallways, and the scratch of pencils on paper. We miss Friday night football games, musical rehearsals, and screaming voices on our playgrounds. A virtual learning environment is difficult on all of us, teachers included. That said, it allows us to continue to educate our students without concern for our own health, the health of our students, or the health of all of our families. We wish that the situation was safe for our students to return fully in person tomorrow. There are simply no indicators that Winthrop, or indeed any nearby community, has the virus under control. According to Dr. Ashisha Jana, the dean of the Boston University School of Public Health, we're entering probably the 2 hardest months of the pandemic. With this warning in mind, we wholeheartedly and enthusiastically endorse the plan developed by Superintendent Howard and the Joint Labor Management Committee. We implore you to approve their plan and delay the return of in-person classes until after the holiday season, allowing us to be sure that case counts do not explode even further, making the next 2 months even harder than they have to be. We look forward to the day that it's safe to return to full in-person learning. Until that day, we will, as always, strive to provide the greatest education possible for all of our students, no matter the location or method. Sincerely, the Executive Board of the Winthrop Teachers Association.
Thank you. Do we have any further public comment, Ms. Galvin?
We do. We have Marissa Ferrer. Melissa, can you unmute yourself?
Hi all, thank you so much for your time tonight. I want to thank you all for the work that you have been continuing to do since before August to get our children back to school in an in-person method. I know that this has not been what any of you signed up for, and you've all done an admirable job, and I know that you don't receive enough thanks, so this is a quick thank you for that. I do want to mention, going back to Ms. Swope and a couple of questions that she had regarding the new metrics. A lot of parents and a lot of folks who have been pretty vocal about trying to get the kids back to in-person learning have been concerned since this metrics came out in August that it did not fairly represent our town and that it was not equitable for a community our size. So obviously the news on Friday that the metrics had changed, most of us found is really good news. So what the state is doing, what DESE, what the governor, and what the State Department of Public Health is doing is using real-time data, real-time science, and real-time facts, which is what you do during a pandemic, to change as this disease is changing and progressing to correctly reflect where we stand now. So that is why we moved into the yellow. Although our cases may seem, or they are higher, and it may not seem to make sense, what the science is doing is proving that this is the correct way to go. We're in the middle of a pandemic. It is not going away anytime soon. We need to learn how to adapt how we live everyday life to be able to return to everyday activities in a safe manner. Just because people want children back to in-person learning does not mean that we are throwing safety or caution to the wind. Schools around the country and around the state are back to in-person learning and are doing it in a safe, controlled manner. A controlled environment for the students and teachers, wearing masks and social distancing and good hygiene practices is the best way to keep our school system, our teachers, our students, and our community at whole safe. I urge you all to continue to look at science and look at the data and look at the new trends and let that be your guide as to when we get these children back to school. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Parent, I do have one letter that was submitted to, it has to be read during public comment. Is that okay?
I think we'll read at the end of public comment on the next section, just so that we can keep the people that are live engaged rather than wait on reading the letter.
Okay.
So Mr. Matucci, is your audio now working? No. We're still not working. Okay.
Can we call him so that he will at least have audio?
Gus, the same thing happened to me in a Zoom the other night, and it was the microphone in the computer was gone. I had to call in on the phone. If you can call in on the phone, you can get in and see you and we can hear you on the phone.
How about if I call Gus's cell phone and I can put it up to the computer?
Call myself, I'll call my house.
Oh,
Oh, no, you're there. You're back.
Back
There you
on?
go, you're back. There you go.
Touch anything.
Good. Good, I won't touch anything.
Mr. Matucci, the question is, did you have a motion in place?
I did not make a motion, but I can. I would like to make a motion that the next cohort of high needs students come back no later than November 23rd. And I'd like to see the rest of the students come back hybrid. That means all students are hybrid no later than December 7th, pending a meeting with the Winthrop Board of Health.
We have a second on that motion
Second.
by Ms. Barry.
Second.
Any discussion? Ms. Powell.
I have just a point, as was pointed out in public comment, November 23rd is Thanksgiving. We'll lose 2 days that week. So I guess my question to Lisa would be, to Ms. Howard would be, what would that look like for the students, and would it make more sense because we would lose those 2 days to have them come back the following week?
It would, because if you start on a Monday and Tuesday in a hybrid model, the Monday, Tuesday kids are back, but then obviously Wednesday is remote. The Thursday, Friday kids would not be back. And then the Monday, Tuesday kids would start again on Monday. So if you want to start it, if you want to make the recommendation for it to begin before the end of November, November 30th, which is a Monday, would be a more appropriate date in terms of equity for both groups. And then just a point of clarity around full in-person, because I know that Mr. Matucci said full in-person hybrid. So I believe he was talking about all students, general education students coming back in a hybrid model and not a full in-person model. And just a point of clarity on full in-person model and what the governor stated, but more importantly, what the Department of Education has as the guidance for full in-person. In our the person, I believe it was Mr. DeMarco, who made the public comment. And so he was right for the majority of what he said. Districts and schools and communities designated as gray, green, or yellow are expected to have students learning fully in person. However, there's a comma after in person, and it says if feasible. And the if feasible goes along to speak about the meeting of the guidelines around safety and social distancing that are in place in the school, or those that are recommended to be in place by the CDC or the Department of Ed. So I just wanted to make sure that there was a designation between full in-person and hybrid, because they're two totally different things.
Chairman,
Yes, Mr. Matucci.
so I'll amend the motion to say November, no later than November 30th. And I don't think, I thought I said hybrid on all the students returning hybrid, no later than December 7th.
And that also is contingent upon a meeting with the
Board of Health.
Board of Health.
Yep.
And feasibility, as Ms. Howard discussed.
Just like the last time when we did this, there's things that have to happen. And if those things can't happen, then this can't happen. We need to put dates down. We need to have goals. I think they need to be sooner than January 4th. And I really believe that Ms. Howard and the staff can get this done.
Ms. Swope.
Mr. Chairman, may I be recognized? I haven't been recognized yet, and after the public comment, you told me I'd be recognized.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Look, here's my honest to God opinion on this. I don't understand the governor for changing the metrics. I wholeheartedly disagree with it. We're only ticking up. Today, there's been 1,100 new cases, 13 deaths. However, this entire time, we've been consistent that we have to listen to the state guidelines. I'm totally open and we're meeting with the Board of the Health. I think they're three great people and they're all smart, but they're an advisory committee. I strongly believe we have to follow the guidelines by the book. That's why the state does it. You could disagree with things in life all the time, but you have to accept it and go by the guidelines. That's how I feel on this.
I totally agree with you, Mr. Capabianco. The only issue is I'd like to bring the Board of Health in because they've been partners with us throughout this entire process and have been very helpful in helping us make determinations and base it upon the science. So I do agree with you that we do have to live by those guidelines. But I think out of respect for the Board of Health that we do bring them in for their expertise to evaluate our plans as we move forward.
Yep, and I think that should be sooner rather than later. And because as we kick the ball up the road, there's a lot of anxiety of people saying, when's this meeting gonna happen? And obviously it needs to be a public meeting.
I agree. And it has to be a public meeting. It would be a joint public meeting. And I believe we could direct Ms. Howard to make that as soon as possible with a 48-hour notice. Boncory? Mr. Boncory, you want to be right?
Yeah, I have no problem. I think we should meet with the Board of Health. And, but the Board of Health, the licensing board, and myself, and our town administrators have all been following the governor's proclamations and the governor's orders. And we're recommending that we continue to follow all of the governor's orders from the administration and from both of those departments, our licensing board and our Board of Health. We have talked on this in the past week since the new rules have changed. And we're just hoping that we remain in the yellow. And if we can remain in the yellow 3 weeks, I think our superintendent, Lisa Howard, can put together what she thinks is the best plan for returning. I'd like to see it, as I said, return it in full person learning, because I don't think hybrid is a great model when you're only getting 2 days of teacher participation with each student. So I believe in either staying remote or going in full in person. But I think the logistics have to be worked out by Superintendent Howard, and I think she can do the statistic work and find out whether it's feasible or not. And we need to find out how many parents will go along with going back in person. I don't think we have that answer yet. And I think we should be getting those answers before we set any dates.
Ms. Swope?
I wish we knew what was going to happen here. And I think we are in a tragic situation. And it's not because of any of us that could make a decision about whether it's happened or not happened, or whether we can actually determine what is going to happen with this virus. But I am very confident that if we really stay by the guidelines, in other words, masks, stay distant, and do the work that we know that can at least help us through this, I think we'll be in better shape. And after a few months, if we are confident that we can be vigilant about all of the work that we need to do here, I'm hoping that we can get back to school and we can be confident that our kids were going to be safe. But right now, I'm not. So I don't vote for going back to school. I don't vote for going back to hybrid. I'm staying with remote if I had a voice in this situation. And hopefully by the spring, after we get through this stuff during this pandemic and during this terrible situation, that we'll be better off. So I vote for staying with remote when we can, and hopefully we'll be better.
Ms. Howard, do you have something further to say on this matter?
Just, thank you for the input. Just from my perspective, and I will speak for my leadership team and all the folks that have put so much into the last 8 months of planning and recommendations and suggestions coming from the key stakeholders that do this work every day in and day out, that we have followed the guidance from the Department of Education to a T. And I think to a point where I've caused some people to not be overly happy with our following that guidance so closely, and reflecting on every thing we do every inch of the way. And in terms of moving forward in the change in the metric, and again, the flexibility of this metric is going to be inordinately helpful to our students. And I can assure you that this just came out on Friday. It was a surprise. And if there's a superintendent around that says it wasn't a surprise, they're not telling the truth. Because unless the governor snuck the information out, even the commissioner was a little bit surprised by the detail of the change in the metrics. But we're shifting and learning. And as we learn and as new things come up, we're shifting with that. And now that we have a new focus and a new plan, and we know that we have a guidance to follow by the state, which is watching this metric for 3 weeks and seeing how we do, and then transitioning, and if we can, go to full in-person learning, which means we have to follow all of the other guidance that we have spent months putting in place. Every bit of safety precaution, the distancing precautions, the PPE, the staffing. If we can have that in place, as outlined in the guidance, it says, full in person, if it is feasible to do so, and you are able to stay in compliance with what you're being asked to do by the department. There are many things that didn't change when this particular rubric changed. There has been no lifting of any of the safety precautions or the other guidance that the department has put in around our facilities and cleaning protocols and things of that nature. And we don't plan to change those. There are many aspects of these plans that people are not aware of, including how we clean our vehicles. And when we put students on buses, what does that look like? How much feet is in between each child? How often do we have to clean those particular areas? What do we have to do with high touch point? None of that has changed, and we will continue to implement that. But full in-person learning, if feasible, we will know after we talk with our parents about how they plan to send their students back to school, what those numbers look like, and if we're able to, at any point in time, expand the total number of students that we have in class. And the second the order is lifted in terms of distancing and all of the safety protocols, and hopefully even before that, we will be able to make a move to full in-person learning. It is my hope that this week we hear from the commissioner as a group, as a superintendent's group, to go over the governor's statements that he made on Friday. That has yet to be done with 311 superintendents in the Commonwealth. And so I can assure you that there are other communities that are feeling the same as ours here in Winthrop, that if the governor said we are all going back to school, full in-person learning, that we just need to flip the full in-person learning switch. However, it doesn't happen that easily. So I hope to hear more from the commissioner and get some more, really clear feedback as to, is there flexibility? Can we do more? Is there things that we can definitely not do? That all comes out after a change is made and the Department of Education then starts to direct us a little bit, more closely. However, following the protocols is something that we will do. And as soon as we can move forward, I would implore folks to do that. I think having 3 weeks to be able to get through this allows you the opportunity to hear from the Board of Health. I understand they're not a voting agency. However, they do have a lot more institutional knowledge about the day-to-day COVID crisis in our community. And they can share that information with our school committee, honestly, and factually with data to back up what they're telling you. So that when you as a committee decide that it's the right time, whether it's December 7th, whether it's December 9th, and whatever the date may be, that you feel confident that you have made a decision that is in the best interest of our students. I would appreciate if you would also listen to me, because as I've stated a number of times, this is what I do all day, every day. I don't have a second job. I don't volunteer on any other committees. This is me. And my job is to make sure that I bring the information to you that best supports our students and our faculty to make sure that we can all stay safe. And so hopefully after meeting with the Board of Health, we'll get back together quickly and make some determination about what that date's going to be, and then pray to the yellow gods that we stay in yellow. Because if we go to red, we're potentially have to start again. And I'm going to be looking for more clarity from the commissioner on what that process is. If we were to be red next week, do we have to hit a restart button, and what does that look like? So I'll bring that information back to the committee as well. So thank you all for listening and providing your input. And it's all very helpful. And I do share every bit of this with our leadership team as we talk about moving forward. That was all I had to say, Mr. Perrin. And I don't think I could muster up anything else for my superintendent report if I tried. I'm sure there's a lot more to talk about, but I will fill people in at our next meeting.
Okay, the motion before the committee is to return the remaining high needs by November 30th, and then all hybrid, all students by December 7th, but upon consultation and meeting with the Winthrop Board of Health to evaluate that plan and get input. Can I get a roll call vote, please, on that?
So that would be Ms. Galvin. We'll do the roll call.
Ms. Barry?
Yes.
Mr. Boncory? Mr. Boncory?
You're muted.
No.
Mr. Capabianco?
Yes.
Mr. Martucci?
Yes.
Ms. Swope,
No.
Ms. Powell,
Yes.
Mr. Perrin.
Yes. Okay. Moving on, delegates and visitors, we have none. Minutes from our October 26th meeting. Can I have a motion, please, to accept the minutes of October 26, 2020?
Motion to approve.
Motion by
Second.
Mr. Matucci, seconded by Ms. Powell. Any discussion on the minutes? Ms. Galvin, can we please have a roll call vote for the record?
Ms. Barry,
Yes.
Mr. Boncory,
Yes.
Mr. Capabianco,
Yes.
Mr. Martucci,
Yes.
Ms. Swope,
Yes.
Ms. Powell,
Yes.
Mr. Perrin.
Yes. Okay, we're going to move on to financial business procedures. We have warrant SVW 21-7, the amount of $124,196.23. Can I get a motion, please, on that warrant?
Motion.
Motion by Mr. Matucci. Second.
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 Second by Ms. Powell. Any discussion on the warrant? Hearing none. Ms. Galvin, can we have a roll call vote for the record?
Ms. Barry,
Yes.
Mr. Boncory,
Yes.
Mr. Capabianco,
Yes.
Mr. Martucci,
Yes.
Ms. Swope,
Yes.
Ms. Powell,
Yes.
and Mr. Perrin.
Yes. We also have a payroll warrant SPW 21-06 in the amount of $728,931.99. Can I get a motion, please, on that payroll warrant?
Motion.
Motion by Mr. Matucci, seconded by Ms. Powell. Any discussion on the warrant? Hearing none. Ms. Galvin, can we please get a roll call vote for the record?
Ms. Barry,
Yes.
Mr. Boncory,
Abstain.
Mr. Capabianco,
Yes.
Mr. Martucci,
Yes.
Ms. Swope,
Yes.
Ms. Powell,
Yes.
Mr. Perrin.
Same. Moving on, I don't believe we have any budget transfers this evening. Ms. Eccles, no?
No?
I believe we have a something on the agenda to accept technology donation from Mia More.
So we're gonna table that. If we could table that, please, to the next meeting.
Okay,
Am I correct, Ms. Powell?
Yes.
Yes, please. Thank you.
nothing to table. We'll just reschedule it under business, under new business. Buildings and grounds, obviously none. Subcommittee reports, we have none. We've already taken the superintendent's report out of order. Ms. Galvin, do we have any homeschool applications that are pending?
We do not.
Okay. Personnel, Ms. Howard, do we have any new personnel matters? Appointments, resignations, retirements, postings, or leaves of absence?
We do. We have Simone Dalton has been appointed as an ESP at the Cummings School. Christine DeFelice has been appointed as an ESP at the Cummings School. Julie Hurtado, also an ESP at the Cummings School. Jason Osborne has moved to the Gorman Fort Banks as the art teacher. And Lisa Sinatra has been hired as an ESP at the William P. Gorman School. And we welcome all of those new staff members who are replacing some staff members who have left, and also Mr. Osborne on his move from being an ESP to taking over a teaching position as an art teacher. We have no resignations to speak of today, no retirements, and no new postings or leave of absences.
Thank you, Ms. Howard.
You're welcome.
We have no new business. The unfinished business, we have this from last week, we tabled, was the high school activity fee. I believe we had something in our packet about what programs are paid for by those fees. And I'll ask Ms. Howard if she could bring us through, and also Ms. Eccles, as to what the impact would be to reducing or eliminating that fee.
Sure. So here, I put in your packet a list of the clubs that Mr. Crombie has asked to run after working with his students. They typically have an activities fair, as he wrote to you all, to gauge student interest. And obviously they did not do that full activities fair this year. So they want to post the clubs up on the website and then notify the students that they can sign up for those. And depending upon the signups, as we do every year, we'll determine if we would run them. And I'll just read the list of clubs for those folks at home who don't have this in front of them. That would be the Yearbook Club, Student Council, the Allies Club, the Art Club, the Math Club, Digital Media Club, Science Club, Gaming Club, Model UN Club, Fitness Club, Viking Times Newspaper Club, and the Robotics Club. All of those activities are run by teachers who sign up to run them. They are paid a fee to run those clubs for the school year, and they receive that amount of money at the end of the school year. We do have a line item in the budget that supports the cost for some of the clubs, and each year students pay a $125 fee, and that fee is used to offset some of that cost. Realizing that this year we did not start these clubs off officially before, in a timely manner at the beginning of the school year, and after we post them, and by the time students sign up, they will have missed a portion of the year. Mr. Crombie has recommended for these clubs, instead of charging a $125 fee, to charge a $75 fee. And he believes that after doing the math, that would cover any offset needed beyond the regular budget for those clubs. And that was the information. And I apologize at the last committee meeting for not having that detail, because it's kind of hard for you all to make a decision if you don't know what you're deciding on. So we brought that forth tonight just to give you more detail. I'm happy to answer any questions, and Susan is here as well, Eccles, and she handles the money part of this. So if you had any questions for her, she could also answer.
Ms.
For
Powell?
the purpose of discussion, can I make a motion that we reduce the cost of the fees to $75 from $125 for this year?
Second.
270. You asked that it be $75. I thought he said 100 last week, but that's fine. To $75, a reduction from 125.
And we have do we have a second on?
Second.
We have a second.
Second.
Any further discussion?
Karen,
Mr. Matucci?
Susan, will we be paying these teachers the full amount of money for the stipend for the club, where it's going to be like half a year or whatever?
It's my understanding we are.
So it'll be a little bit more than half the year, because hopefully we'll get them up and running relatively quickly. He didn't want to post them, but he does have interest. So an interest of staff. So I think if we can get them posted, I think the kids will sign up relatively quickly and they can get underway. Mr. Crombie also talked about potentially adding some more dates in terms of how often they run, if we had to make up any time. It's a relatively small teacher stipend.
Yeah, it's not very much.
That's why I'd like to see if we weren't going to pay the full amount because it's starting later. But if they're going to do extra classes or extra time to get the clubs going, I guess it would be, full pay. But I would like to see there be no fee.
And what would the implication there be, Ms. Eccles? Would we be taking funds from somewhere else?
Most likely.
That's the issue.
You have to go somewhere to get
Well,
them. But
I don't know. I don't.
Kind of hard to predict, I would say.
Bottomless pit, it's difficult to.
Sort of hard to predict with the situation we're in, with sort of not knowing what's coming next in terms of staffing. And I've, working with the team and working with Susan, of course, talking about, we're constantly looking at our own budget. And my concern moving forward, just for this committee, is what's the outcome gonna be from a staffing perspective if we have to continuously add staff or pay staff who are out for legitimate reasons on a leave of absence, but their class still needs to be covered. So we haven't reached a full idea of what that's going to look like moving forward. So that's sort of an unknown budgetary hit that could be out there. And again, it's unknown. So
It changes every single day.
yeah, so we're trying to be somewhat conservative in how we're spending our money, not, obviously, and, if we're reducing things, doing it in a manner that doesn't leave us, with nothing and having to go somewhere, to retrieve that money, because then that money's not available for what we know coming down the line, maybe a shortfall in salary.
Right.
Yeah.
Because we're not bringing any money in this year for anything.
Mr. Matucci?
For the lunch program, for the international students, and we're going to have to do other things with the budget.
Chairman, do we provide any other monies to these clubs for any supplies or anything?
Not really.
Again, I would be in favor of, I'm pretty sure these stipends are small, and I would be in favor of no fee. But
I just want you to be aware, though, last year, what we paid in stipends was over $100,000.
okay, so, and my thing is this going to be the end of the clubs, or are they going to add more clubs?
That we don't know.
So right now, Mr. Grumby said that was the extent of the clubs unless the students bring up something that they want to add, and then that would have to go through us, in terms of whether or not, if it's not something that's in the teacher's contract as a position. As you know, the teacher's contract has those stipended positions in it. If those were to come up and they weren't in the teacher's contract, the committee would have to agree to those. But otherwise, he felt like this was pretty much going to be it for the school year in terms of year-long clubs.
Mr. Chairman, may I ask a question?
Yes, Mr. Capabianco.
Thank you. Ms. Eccles or Superintendent Howard, do we have any savings from transportation this year that could be used to offset the cost of activity fees?
So
we don't know what's going to happen with.
Well, I can speak to that. So transportation, once athletics happens, we haven't transported any students just yet for fall athletics, but we have a fall athletics 2 season. So it's moved obviously to the next athletic season, which I believe is in February. They've moved, say, football and the other fall sports. The difference between transportation last year and this year is that the distancing requirements for transportation make it very difficult to be able to fully transport our students. If you have a football team and you can only put on a 72-person bus, 25 students, we're going to need more buses to do that. So we are looking at, and Mr. Serino has done some work on this for our group. You're looking at 2 to 3 times the cost of bus transportation per sport moving forward. So we are looking for some solutions on that. And we do have some ideas with our sports teams in terms of students potentially transporting, families transporting students to help with that cost. But there will be, if none of that comes to fruition, by no means will there be anything less than a deficit in the transportation budget line because of the amount of vehicles we're going to need to transport our athletes.
So the motion is for a $75 fee. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, can I get a roll call vote, please, Ms. Galvin?
Ms. Barry?
Yes.
Mr. Boncory?
Yes.
Mr. Capabianco?
Yes.
Mr. Martucci?
No.
Ms. Swope?
Yes.
Ms. Powell?
Yes.
Mr. Perrin?
Okay, we're back to public comment. Do we have any further public comment, Ms. Gallivan? I know we have one letter that was sent in that needs to be read.
Yes, we do. And we have one person with their hand raised. And Ms. Swope has her hand up. I don't know. if you
I just asked, I thought we were going to talk about sports. Is that something that we're going to bring up later or?
So yes, athletics, I think when MIAA and Mr. Serino and Mr. Crombie were meeting today, when we have more definitive information, the MIAA was coming out with all of their new guidelines on winter sports. So I think we have to see those guidelines. We've adjusted our guidelines within the district to be in sync with MIAA's fall rules and I can't remember the acronym, but it has something to do with the environmental side. So there's 3 groups. There's the environmental side, the MIAA side, and then the local, which is us. So as soon as they have the definitive guidance on winter sports, then Mr. Serino and Mr. Crombie will do a presentation to the school committee to help inform the school committee about the next step for athletics, depending upon how our high school kids are going back. And that is going to be able to help us speak to our students that are fully remote and choosing to be fully remote, and also what the guidelines are around us beginning to actively participate in practices prior to the winter season opening, if in fact we know we have a return to school hybrid date that falls within the season and not more than halfway through the season. That I do know. So you really, they're the experts on that, and I can talk about it to a degree, but I think until that guidance was solidified, we should hold that, which certainly can be within the next week, but definitely for the next meeting.
Thank you.
Okay, public comment.
Yes, we have Katie McIntyre. Katie, can you unmute yourself?
Shut it off.
I think we're done with public comment.
Yeah, it looks like that.
Okay, we
I have the
another
one letter to read.
Karen DeMarco also submitted a letter to be read.
Yes. Okay. Dear Winthrop School Committee members, the news of our state's revised metric system and updated recommendations to each school district that came out this past Friday was very encouraging and much needed. For months, we have been told that remote learning was our only option while Winthrop was considered red due to the expectations of DESE. Finally, the criteria has been changed, making Winthrop a yellow community, giving us not only permission to reopen the schools, but the expectation that Winthrop will provide full-time in-person learning. Since many of you have referenced the state's guidance as your reason for voting to keep the school closed, I hope that you will be consistent in following that guidance and vote to open our schools as soon as it is reasonably possible. Our children cannot afford any further delays. Please keep in mind the disturbing statistics reported by Dr. Mary Beth Mioto, VP of the Massachusetts chapter of the American Academy of Pediatrics, at the press conference on Friday. One of the more sobering facts being that hospital censuses are consistently reflecting more hospitalizations for youth suicide attempts than pediatric COVID-19 cases. Additionally, many of these kids with suicidal thoughts and attempts don't have a history of behavioral health problems. They're typical children bending or breaking under the stress of the pandemic, and specifically for being alone for long hours at the computer. It is time to put this dark period of remote learning behind us and begin what is sure to be a long process of reversing the negative impacts that it has had on our children. Thank you, Karen DeMarco.
Any further public comment? And I would say
I do see one name, but I don't know the name.
It is Mrs. Chavez, but
Okay.
You can give her a second, but she doesn't spell her name like that. So I would prefer she text me if she wants to speak and I could let her in.
Yeah, I didn't recognize that last spelling.
Yeah, it's her first name is spelled. You can try her and we could just get ready to morph her out.
Okay.
I'll know immediately. Mrs. Chavez, is this you?
Yes, it's me.
Okay, good, because we had a couple of people come on earlier that were being silly. So, and then when you put your name in, you didn't spell your last name right, but you spelled your first name right. So we will let you speak.
I apologize for that.
No, that's fine. I just wanted to make sure it was you and nobody using your name.
It is me, Mrs. Howard.
All right, I can tell. Go right ahead.
First of all, I'd like to applaud the school committee, the 5 people that did vote to start school on the 7th of December, pending your meeting with the Board of Health and our position with the metric system. I listened to a nurse practitioner call in tonight, a teacher call in tonight, and a parent, all saying they want their kids back in school. I know that it's 4 weeks isn't very much time for you, Mrs. Howard, to get this going, but I know that you can do it. The survey has to go out. Are the parents going to say yes or no? Starting the 7th is only 3 weeks before Christmas vacation, but I don't think that's a bad thing. And the reason I say that is because you're going to get the kids back into school and get into some sort of routine, which they have not had since the 13th of March. If you wait until January to start them, January 4th, they will need a couple of weeks to get back up. This way, when they go back on January 4th, they will be ready with full steam ahead for the next 5.5 months, which we all hope will be very productive. Again, Mrs. Howard, I compliment you on the job that you are doing. It couldn't be any better. And for the rest of the school committee too, for what they are doing.
Thank you, Mrs. Travis, as always.
Thank you, Mrs. Travis. We appreciate it.
Okay, we're moving on to public relations. Ms. Swope, do you have anything this evening?
No.
Ms. Barry?
Yes, I just want to read a quote from Governor Baker from his conference on Friday. It's short. "We all know that losing a week, a month, a quarter, or more in the life of a kid's education has real consequences. And that's why today we're improving our methods for assessing transmission rates in communities and upgrading school guidance to reflect what the data now makes clear, that learning can happen safely in the classroom."
Thank you, Ms. Barry. Mr. Capabianco, do you have anything this evening?
Yes, I just want to personally thank Carla Vitale and Joanne D'Amato and all of our poll workers for running a great election with a high turnout in the heat of a pandemic. We're all proud of everything they've done.
Mr. Matucci, do you have anything this evening?
All set, thank you.
President Boncory?
Just to remind people that the new governor's order requires you to wear a mask, even when you're outside. Please wear your mask, social distance, and let's get our numbers lower, please.
Ms. Powell, do you have anything this evening?
No.
Okay, there's just a couple of things I have on the agenda for public relations. The Winthrop High School senior class is taking orders for Spinelli's Thanksgiving pies at $15 each. You can contact Jeannie Polino at jp9399@yahoo.com or Dorina Shea or dorina.shea, SHEA, @gmail.com. Delicious pies. Volunteers from the class of 2021 will be collecting food donations at the Winthrop Community Food Pantry located at 22 Bowden Street on Wednesdays from 3 p.m. to 6 p.m. Through Thanksgiving. If you're unable to get there on Wednesday, please call 617-846-2363 to arrange a drop-off time. The pantry is run by volunteers and is not staffed at all times.
Chairman,
Yes,
I think
Mr.
Ms. Howard has something.
I do, if you don't mind, through the chair, just to jump on what Tino had to say. We used our schools for voting polls again this year, the Cummings School and the high school. Just a shout out to the custodial staff who, once again, pretty much killed it in terms of preparation and speaking with Joanne and working closely with the town and having that open communication and being willing to keep our schools in the shape that we want them in and taking care of what we have. So, on the back of Joanne and certainly Carla, shout out to that custodial staff and for the principals for being there to keep those buildings open.
Thank you. And thank you to the custodial staff. Can I get a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Seconded by Mr.
I got you.
Galvin. Ms. Galvin, can we have a roll call vote for the record?
You're muted, sorry.
Ms. Barry,
Yes.
Mr. Boncory,
Yes.
Mr. Capabianco,
Yes.
Mr. Martucci,
Yes.
Ms. Swope,
Yes.
Ms. Powell,
Yes.
Mr. Parent.
Thank you, everyone.
Right all.
Thank you.
Thank
Good
you all.
night.
Right.
Right.